Mic check. Welcome and thank you for joining me today. My name is Anthony. We are going to do a quick summary of the React Native project that I worked on in the last stream. And then we're going to start hacking on a new project. It's going to be a journaling app, and it's going to be a web application first, and hopefully we can get this published as an app in the iOS App Store as well. Great. So yeah, in the last stream I was stuck waiting for a link for TestFlight. So TestFlight is a way to give beta testers access to your iOS apps. So yeah, I just had to wait 10 minutes or so, and I was able to get the TestFlight link without doing anything extra. So yeah, just for posterity's sake, these were the steps I had to do to publish a React Native app to TestFlight. So I used the Expo framework. So I ran this command, expo build iOS archive. What that did, it triggered a build on Expo's server. And this took a little bit because there is a queue. You're waiting for other people's builds to finish. But once your build finishes, you get a link to download something called an IPA file. And yeah, so this, yeah, just the IPA file. I think it represents the executable of your iOS app. Great, so that's what Expo Build does for you. Yeah, then I downloaded the IPA file. Step 3, App Store Connect. So you have to sign up for a developer account. I think it costs $98 a year. Then you'll have access to this website, appstoreconnect.apple.com. Once you're in here, you can create new apps. So once you hit this plus button, just enter in the basic information like the app name, the version, etc. And it creates an entry for your new app. But you still have to upload this IPA file. Just creating this entry here doesn't do anything with that IPA file. So you have to download this Mac app called Transporter. And this allows you to drag and drop IPA files. I think you can also upload videos and music and whatnot, I guess if you have an iTunes store. So that takes a little bit of time to upload, and Apple also does verification, authentication, all that good stuff. So that's going to take a little bit, but once that's uploaded, it will get linked to this app over here. And you should be able to see your build. So if I click this drop down, go to TestFlight, you should be able to see the build, just this thing, this IPA file that you just uploaded. and I labeled it as version 1.0.0. But once that is uploaded through this transporter app over here, then there will be a link to send it out to beta testers. And sorry, mic just disconnected. Yeah, so once you send out your test flight link, it's going to get emailed to the testers that you have in your groups. The beta testers will have to download an app called Test Flight, so they can find that on the App Store. And then once you're in the Test Flight app, they should see something, probably not the best view, but they'll see a button there that says Redeem, and then they enter the redemption code for the Test Flight, the beta app from the email they got, and they will install the published app. So relatively simple once you know all the steps involved. But yeah, I will publish this gist, and yeah, I think that's all to talk about React Native today. For the rest of the stream, probably going to be working on this for an hour. Going to be doing a mock of this journaling app, see what that looks like, and I'm going to use state machines in this project, so probably going to work on the state machines. Oops. So let me just update the stream info. Review React Native, done. Okay. So this journaling app. So yeah, might as well talk technology since I already mentioned state machines. I'm going to be using Chrome Canary. I guess not. We'll be using XState for my state machine and using NextJs, which is a framework sort of like a Ruby on Rails for React. In terms of server, I'm going to try to I usually use Mongo as my database. Going to try to play around with SQL. Never use a SQL server with an Express backend only for this. So that should be interesting. Authentication will just be using Passport.js, so using sessions and cookies. And I think that's everything tech related. Yeah, so journaling. What is a journal? So not really sure what this journal app is going to look like. So I'm going to make a couple of mocks for some screens and go from there. Let's get this laptop plugged in first. Okay, so what I wanted for this journal, There are some journals I was looking at with one of my friends, and it was like 1 line a day. But one of the things I don't like about my current journal is I never reflect on previous entries. Maybe that's more a fault of me. But my friend Grace, she mentioned this 1 line a day journal. So it's a 5-year journal. So let's open up one of the images. Maybe. I just want to show a page from the journal. Unless it's just going to freeze. Yeah, so Amazon isn't cooperating here. Something's something weird is happening with my mic. There we go. Hello? Okay. Got it. So now I think I'm using the correct mic. Let me just set this up. Okay. Checking the mic. Mic check. Okay, so I think it works. Okay, let's keep going and see what happens. So where were we? Yeah, I was talking about the journals, but Amazon wouldn't load it up, so we get to draw something. So what I liked about the journal is it's a 5-year journal, and it had each page represented one day of the year, like January 28th, let's say. But what's nice about it is there are 5 entries here. So if I started my journal entry this year in 2011, let's say, I would fill out the first entry, and then next year, when it's January 28th again, I would fill out the second line, so on and so forth. So what's nice about this is it forces you to look back at your old journal entries, something that I never do with my current journaling technique. So yeah, just kind of take this idea, make it into a web application or an iOS app, and possibly add some semantic in the back end. Hey, Juan Carlos Spaco, what am I doing? Yeah, so right now I am drawing some mocks for a journaling app. It's going to be a simple web app, but it's inspired by, if you go on Amazon and Google a 1 line a day journal, I was saying that, yeah, for the current journaling that I do, I never get a chance to reflect back on previous entries. But what's nice about this is for every day of the year, like you write your entry for 2021 here, and then next year you would do it in 2022, you would write your entry here, but it gives you a chance to look above and see like, wow, my year really sucked before, and now I'm doing amazing. So this is going to be the main meat of the app, just having a user being able to add a journal entry and also see previous journal entries. And depending on like what we want to do on the back end, we could add some, what's that called? When you look at a sentiment analysis. Yeah, so we could do some sentiment analysis on the back end. Analysis. Let's see. Analysis. But it will process a text. You could process text and then tell you what the general sentiment is. Is this generally negative or positive? And I think that'd be interesting to look back last couple of years and see if you've been having good days, if you've been having bad days, maybe have a point to reflect and see if you should change anything with your life. But yeah, today I'm going to do some mocks. Not a designer, Juan, but I'm going to make some bare bones mocks. I have a friend who is a million times better at design than me, but I will give her these lines and she will make something beautiful out of it, I am sure. So I'm wondering if we need any other pages right now. There's going to be some login pages and whatnot, but I think that is pretty boring. So yeah, my designer friend will be very disappointed with the mock I have made, but I think this is enough for us to get started. Cool. So for this project, we are going to be using NextJs, which is a framework for React. I'm going to be using state machines, and yep, it's going to be JavaScript. The backend will be Express, Node, and hopefully going to try SQL for the database. So I think, yeah, so I used Next.js's template.
which is create next app, which is sort of like create React app. And I created a new app with this, calling it my journal, or I'm already in it, and just going to start the local environment. And I'm curious, Juan, what languages do you code in? So for this, not going to do a lot of back-end work. And I'm probably just going to save the journal entries into local storage at this point. And yeah, just do the front end. Just purely front end. Nim as a language, I've never heard of Nim. Nim is for backend and front end. Imperative general purpose. Yeah, I've never heard of this. Looks very interesting though. Is there any relationship between this and Vim, the code editor? Okay, so let's open up our server, localhost 3000. We should have a boilerplate page. Boom, there it is. We are halfway there. So let's make a page for journal entries. Okay. So what do we want to make? Yeah, so we'll just have the home page be this beautiful mock that I showed. Let me just open that. Okay. So we just need today's date. We need today's date. We also have to make API call. I'll put it in quotes because for this initial pass, we're going to be saving everything to local storage. Make API call to get previous journal entry, the date. And what's nice about doing this digitally is the analog journal. It takes you a year of journaling before you could start reflecting back on your journal entries. Like, unless you purposely look back on January 28th. Like, it's going to take you a whole year to end up back here. So digitally, we could add some logic where, you know, if you're in your second week, you could reflect back in your previous week. When your second month, you could reflect back in your first month, etc. Okay, make API call to get previous journal entries for the date. Allow user to save journal entry. I think we just want CRUD functionality, right? Create, read, update. I'm just not sure about delete. Yeah, we'll just have create, read, update, no delete. Hey Juan, no TypeScript for this project. We're just being risky. Have you worked with TypeScript? I still just haven't taken the time to set it up. I feel like I'd love it. Okay, so we have create, read, update, and I think that's it. So let's just create some bare bones stuff here. Line by line journal. Let's delete everything in between. Let's get today's date. What's today's date? February 17th, 2021. Is there a HTML tag for date? Tag. Okay, so I'm just seeing if there's an HTML tag that is meant for dates. So there's a time tag. Let's see what that represents. Yeah, there is the time tag. Is date the same thing as time though? Okay, a precise date in the Gregorian calendar. Yeah, July 7th. So it's time. It's time. Looks like it takes a date time attribute. Okay, so the date type passed in has to be dates like this. Yeah, I think this is simple enough. So let's use that. So we're going to use the time tag. And the attributes, just called date time. And then let's have a text area for the user to enter new journal entries. Hey Juan, so you mentioned you prefer NIM. You don't have to write the DOM tags. Are you saying you don't have to write the DOM tags because you don't need to do that in your project, or that in NIM you don't have to write down text. Okay, we have text area here, and then we'll probably have something like previous years, previous entries. So I'm just going to get the markup working and then add the functionality in afterwards. So what's our data going to look like? So ideally, let's pull up Excalidraw. I just want to, I didn't think I would make any architecture decisions here, but since we're already here, okay, so we have our client, then we have our server. So what API calls does the client need to make? So it just has to make an initial like get call, get journals, something like that. And I will accept better API names. And what journal returns are the user's previous journal entries for the relevant time period. So I was saying that the previous entries are going to be dynamic. So it could be entries from the last week, entries from the last month, entries from the previous year. Okay, as I'm talking about this, it seems more like it should look something like this. We're going to return some entries, a list. And it's going to have a date. It's going to have text. And I think that's enough for now. No. Ooh. Is this screenshot from Carbon? Okay, so we have, wow, okay. Yes, I am glad that it isn't one. This sort of reminds me of syntax-wise, what is it called? Elm? Yeah, syntax-wise, it kind of reminds me of this, and it looks like each of these HTML tags are actually in Elm. I think you can think of them as functions, and in Nim, it looks sort of similar. It is very cool. Okay, too many tabs open. Computer is not liking that. Okay, so for entries, we're going to receive a response in this shape. So yeah, let's just say entries. And I'm going to put in some dummy entries here. And then we're going to iterate over that. So what would that look like? Let's do data.entries.map entry. And we're just going to render a div. The date should be unique enough for the key. We're going to render another time tag. Time, dates. And probably just a p tag for our text. Tell us captured. Okay, let's see if this renders anything. Beautiful. Yeah, tell us about your day, and we see all the previous entries. I'm actually curious what the date, the time tags appear as for accessibility. I've just never had to use anything with dates, or I didn't care about accessibility. Whoops. Yeah, so let's select this in the Chrome DevTools, and there should be something here for accessibility. So yeah, let's click on accessibility. Ignored. Okay, I am not clicking the right thing. Let's see. Okay, so it just reads it out. Yeah, I thought it'd be something a little fancier. But this is cool. So what should we do now? Let's add some functionality in here. So I wanted to use state machines. Yeah, I've just been trying to use state machines for more of my new projects. So let's try to model this rather simple journal state machine. So let's call it journal machine. Sounds pretty cool. ID is just an identifier for the state machine. So GitHub uses the time tag, so it should be okay. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, there's just so many HTML tags that I just haven't used. And the ones that I do like using that are obscure are now deprecated. One of my favorites is, I don't know, Juan, if you've seen the marquee tag before. Oh, so there's a nice little Google Easter egg, but this is a preview of what the marquee tag is. Deprecated, blah, blah, blah. Ignore that. It still works. But look at this. Now, this is what the web should look like. Details tag. Details, is that the HTML tag that has a toggle, like I expand? Detail tag. HTML. Disclosure. Yeah. Yep. I'm a big fan of this one too. Okay, so I wanted to bring up the mock. It's so sad every time I bring it up, thinking it's something amazing. But yeah, thinking about the state machine, there's going to be a loading state when the web app is making an API call to our server. We'll probably just show a loading spinner or a skeleton of sorts. Then we will have, let's see, let's go here. Okay. There's a tag for modal pop-up too. You stumped me on that one, Juan. There's a tag for modal pop-up? Are you talking about the JavaScript alerts or prompts methods? Otherwise, I actually don't know of a tag that gives you that modal pop-up functionality. Cool. So states, we will have a loading state. Oh, there's already a loading, so let's delete that. Then, once we have finished loading the entries, what other states can we be in? Let me delete this. So once it's loaded, there are actually two states that we could transition to. One is if the user hasn't added a journal entry yet for the day. So we will call that created. What is a reasonable name? Something like reading. So if they have already created a journal entry for the day, they will be in something called a reading state. Otherwise, they will be in a creating state. So let's update this. And this isn't updating, so let's take a look. So yeah, on the left here, we should be seeing our state machine getting updated here, but it looks like probably have some syntax issues. Initial state idle, not found on journal. So here it shouldn't be idle, it should be loading. That's it. Bam. Okay, so how do we transition from loading to reading or creating? So there is documentation. So XState transitions. Transient. Okay. Yeah, so this is what I am looking for. Transient transition. Transient transition. Oh, so the syntax is deprecated. Use always instead. See below on eventless transitions, which are the same. Transient transitions. So an eventless transition is a transition that is always taken when the machine is in the state where it is defined, and when its conditional guard evaluates to true. Okay, so let me close some tabs here. Okay, so always, because after we load, we don't want to stay in the state, we want to go somewhere. So I think, yeah, it's been a while since I've worked with machines. And I actually want to invoke an API call first. So there. Invoking services. So this allows me to do an API call. Like this. Okay. So there's an invoke, there's a source on error. Okay. So we will do this. Invoke. So as soon as we go into loading state, we're going to call this what do you call this? Function that returns as promise. So we're going to call this, we're going to return a promise that resolves with our API call. So the ID of this service, just for debugging purposes, will be fetch journal entries. The source will be fetch journal entries, and I'm pretty sure it can accept strings, and then you could pass in a second argument to machines, where you have something like services, fetch journal entries, which returns a promise. So this function will get mapped to this source over here. And we'll see about the API. It might be slightly different. Maybe it's not called services. Who knows? So once the API call has completed successfully, we will, it accepts a target. Let's say that when the API call is finished, it goes to success. And then we do some actions here. So actions, so if we go back, we have something called context here. So this stores the sort of like local state of your application. So if you're thinking in terms of React, it would be React useState. Like what type of states would you have for this journaling app? You could represent it as, well, they just call it context in the XState world. So we probably care about the journal entry text. The initial value will just be an empty string. And then something else is journal entries, which represents the journal entries for that you will look back upon for that day. So I mentioned context because when our API call has finished fetching the journal entries, we probably want to save the results of the API call into our context. So with actions, we will call cache journal entries. And again, the second argument to machines, I believe it takes something called actions. Cache. And available variables. Yeah, XState exposes a function called assign that lets you update your context. And I'm trying to remember the API call. It accepts a function. So the first argument to the function represents your current context. So sometimes you might want that to append to your current context. In our case, we don't need this, but I'll leave it there. The event represents information that is passed to this call to cache journal entries. In the case of the invoked promise here, it will get called with the result value from fetch journal entries. So inside our assign callback over here, we can return journal entries. So this is similar to setState in React. Whatever we pass here will merge in with our previous context. So we're overriding the journal entries. So event represents the API response. And I think it's just entries. Cool. Let's be sure to create a success state. So we also want to create an on error state, target error. Hey Rockstar, how's it going? Okay, so we're going to have an error state, and this state will probably be final. If for some reason our API call just craps out, we'll show an error message to the user, and they'll just refresh the page. So let's actually try hitting update and see what errors we get. Ooh. Okay, so it's working. So we see here we start off with the loading state. As soon as that happens, we call fetch journal entries, which will make an API call. If that API call is successful, it will go to, I think it's kind of hard to see here, but it will go to success. And if there's an error, it's going to go into the error. And we can, I think we marked off error here. As a final state. And what we want to do when we're in the success state, there's actually two things we want to do. Not two things we want to do, two states we could go into. What is this XState? Yeah, so this XState website, it's a visualizer for visualizing your state machines. Okay, so once we get our API call, there are two states we can transition to. One is, and let me pull up the docs. Oh, so one is we don't have any journal entries yet. In that case, we are going to be in a creating state. We're going to be prompting the user to enter a journal entry. If they already have journal entries for the day, they are going to be transitioned to the reading state. Yeah, state machines in JavaScript. I miss the days of spaghetti code. Thanks, Rockstar. But yeah, there's an awesome developer. I think his name is David Korshad. But yeah, he's been doing a lot of talks about state machines and really getting this concept out there. So this is one of his libraries, XState, and just checking it out. Behavior trees are very nice. Also, that's how Vim Deathmatch manages game state. So what are behavior trees versus state machines? Okay, so right now we are looking for transitions. Many times you want a transition between states to only take place if certain conditions on the state are met. So that seems right. Okay, so syntax should be, so once we're in this success state, we're always going to do this. And this is just freeballing the API right now. Okay, always target reading condition. Did so I want to go to the reading state if did create journal entry for the day. So yeah, that name is open to edit. And then if it isn't, we'll just default to creating. So let's add this in. Services. And I think it's called conditionals. Did journal today. That's probably a better one. And looking back at my context, we have some state here. One of it is what the user is typing in for today's journal entry. The other one is a list of all previous journal entries. But I don't differentiate between previous journal entries and entries from today, which I probably want to do. So yeah, let's assume we have today's journal entry. Today's journal entry. And we'll assume that we get this from the API call. So event.today's journal entry. And our conditional for did journal today will just return context, today's journal entry. So let's click update and see what we have. And nothing's updating. So let's look for the bug. We got a nice T for the bug. Yeah, so it looks like there isn't a bug showing up in the console, so it's probably just my syntax. So let's look for always. Wait. Always. Okay. So always, it's a key and it takes an array. So target condition, target condition. So what do I have? Target condition. So I didn't update this string. Did journal today. Let's see. Yeah, it's not. I sort of want to refresh the page because these arrows aren't even showing up. Oh, they're there. Yeah, so from success to reading. Creating. Oh, so it's called guards rather than conditionals. Not sure if that makes a difference, but let's fix that. So here at conditionals should be guards. Okay. Okay, that didn't do it. So one thing. So one thing I do want to try is maybe this visualizer, which doesn't really make sense. Maybe it doesn't handle the always keyword. That's kind of strange. But let me just save my state machine work in a file first. So I'm going to paste in what I have. So I'm going to go to the documentation, just copy this state machine here, paste it into the visualizer, and see what it looks like. Okay. Yeah, it doesn't seem to link up eventless transitions. I wonder if that's a bug. XState, visualizer, oof, X, nope. Always transition. So there's a GitHub issue here. So it looks like the XState visualizer doesn't handle the always transition, and this code sandbox seems like a workaround. But I think that at least gives me a little more confidence in the state machine I have right now. So yeah, we're getting towards the end of the stream, so I want to just go over what we have right now in terms of a state machine. So our state machine starts off on the loading state. It's going to make an API call. When the API call successfully resolves, it's going to go into the success state. When it errors, it's going to go to the error state. And the error state, it's a final node, meaning you can't transition out of this. And for the UI, we'll probably show something like, something went wrong, please refresh the page. So what happens when the API call is successful? So we want to look at the API response, and we want to see if the API response has a journal entry for today. If it does have a journal entry for today, we will put them into a reading state. Otherwise, we're going to put them in a creating state. And just for the new viewers that joined, yeah, for the next couple of streams, I'm going to be working on this I think it's called line by line journal. So I do journal entries every day, but one of the problems I have is not reflecting on previous journal entries. It's always just writing, and I just can never find time to review previous journal entries. So there's a product on Amazon. If you search for a line by line journal, you actually write, one of the pages looks something like this. So you have the day of the year, but then you also have 5 sort of spaces. So each one of these spaces represents a year. So if we're starting in 2021, you'll write your entry here. When you finish up the journal, you're in 2022. Next year, you'll write your journal entry here now underneath it. So what's nice about this is you're kind of forced to look up and reflect and see how you did since the previous year. With the analog journal, it had spaces for 5 years. With the digital one, we could do more. What's nice about a digital version is we aren't stuck to waiting a year to start reflecting. So when we make our API calls to get our previous journal entries, we could have some logic like if you're in your second week, it could show you the first week's journal entry. If you're in your second month, we could show you the first month's journal entry. So we don't have to wait a whole year before you could start getting value and reflecting. Something else I was thinking about is sentiment analysis. So it'd be interesting to parse through all of your journal entries and then have a mood rating, like whether you've been having a lot of bad days, a lot of good days, and see if there are patterns there. So this is what we are going to work on. This will be a web application. It's going to be NextJs, which is a framework built for React. For our APIs, we're going to use Express and Node. For database, going to be trying out some type of SQL database. And once the web app is up and running, I played with React Native in previous streams, so hopefully going to create this as a native app as well. But thank you everyone for joining, and happy coding. Have a good night.